it's Cindy from CGR Educational Consulting. Today I want to talk about building meaningful relationships with your students. As a behavior coach and teacher consultant, I spend a lot of time talking to teachers about the negative behaviors in their classroom. And a lot of times when we go back and we look at what's going on, we see it's a broken relationship that's going on between them and the student. And that's why we're having this power struggle. I'm going to focus on difficult students, the ones that seem to be explosive, the ones that are never absent for some reason, and you just sometimes need a little bit of a break. Yeah, you know who I'm talking about. I want to talk about those students, because if this works for those students, then you know it's going to work for all of the students in your class. Now, we can't start this conversation about building relationships if we don't talk about relational capacity. Okay, if you've never heard of relational capacity, it's the level of trust and safety between the student and the teacher. The influence you have on a student is directly related to the level of relational capacity. So why is this important? Well, if you have a high level of relational capacity, your relationship with your student will be able to withstand struggles and disagreements, just like any other relationship. The closer you are to somebody, the more likely it is that if there's a disagreement or a struggle, you'll be able to hash it out and move forward. You won't hold on to grudges and feel angry for a long time. You're going to disagree, but you move on. So this is why it's important, because you're not going to get along with all of your students. There's going to be a student that you're going to butt heads with, and that's just, you're human. It's going to happen, and that's okay. If you build this relational capacity, you'll be able to get through those tough moments that you're going to have, because we're dealing with human beings. So let me give you 4 keys to building relationships. Number 1 is time. Now, in a classroom of 24, 32, 40 students, how do you provide students time, individual time? Because that's what's going to start building those relationships. Them not feeling invisible, them knowing that you know their name, that you know a little bit about them. First thing you could do is greet them at the door. Greeting them at the door is a great way to be able to look at them in the eye, give them a little bit of time to themselves. When I would greet my students at the door, I'd always ask them about, hey, how was that baseball game you had yesterday? Or you look a little bit upset today. Is everything okay? I noticed that you look a little sad. Do you need to talk? So it's a perfect opportunity for you to take the time and show them that you care, that you want to know what's going on in their lives. Number 2, affirm and listen. When building relationships, you want to be able to be a good listener. You want to be able to not just fix all their problems, but be agreeable. So if a student tells you that they're having a hard time, instead of saying, why don't you just go make other friends? You could say something more to the effect of, sometimes it's really hard to make new friends. It's difficult not being able to find friends to talk to or hang out with. They're going to be like, whoa, you listen to me, you understand me. And I know as adults we want to just try to fix everything, because sometimes the problems just seem to have an easy fix. But if we just tell them how to fix it, they're going to just think, well, you don't really understand where I'm coming from. So don't fix it, just affirm and listen. Number 3, don't try to prove that you're always right. I know that could be very difficult, but when you have a student that is difficult, you want them to be able to save face. You don't want to embarrass them in front of their peers. You don't want to call them out on everything. That's just going to break the relationship. So what you want to do is maybe, if possible in your classroom, take them off to the side, ask them to stay after class so you can talk to them for a minute, and be okay of having that one-on-one conversation. Number 4, which I think is one of the most important pieces of this, is be willing to ask for forgiveness. Sometimes we're going to screw up. We're human beings. There could be a time where you have a flat tire, you're getting to work, you forgot your phone, and you're just not feeling it that day. And you're going to be extra snappy. It's okay to say, hey, I'm sorry about the way I reacted the other day. Are we cool? I'm sorry about that. That goes a long way. First, it's going to help mend your relationships. And you're going to be able to not lose all that time that you spent building that relationship. Number 2 is that you're modeling for the student how to say I'm sorry. Some students have no idea how to own up to their mistakes. And this would be a perfect opportunity for them to hear an adult use a rational voice to say I'm sorry, and they'll be able to internalize that and then use it later when they need to. Let's transition over to how do we build relationships. Tell your students a little bit about yourself. You don't have to tell them your whole backstory, but just maybe what kind of music you like. What bands are you listening to? Kids want to hear that, and they'll be able to relate to you. I had a difficult student in one of my classes, and I could tell we just were not clicking. She could care less about what I was saying in the class. And one day I shared with the class that I was learning how to crochet and what a hard time I was having with that. And I swear, like instantly, her body language just changed. And then after class, she came up to me and she said, you said you were learning how to crochet. My grandma taught me how to crochet, and I really enjoy it. And after that, it was easy. Like after that, we were like besties. And if it wasn't for that quick story and that connection that we made, I'm pretty sure she would have struggled in my class the whole year. Another thing you can do is play games with your students. Laugh together. You got to remember that laughing brings up the endorphins. And when your endorphins are up, it brings down your stress level. And as a bonus, humor causes more brain activity, which will maximize learning and memory. So you can use the games to also teach procedures in class. So when it gets loud during the game, you can teach them also how to bring it back, how you're going to get back their attention. If you're playing, let's say, a game like People Bingo, and at the end they need to turn in their forms, this is a perfect opportunity for the procedure of how do we turn in papers in this classroom. Part of having relationships is that if you have rules in your classroom, they're not really going to help those difficult students, because without relationships, people are not motivated to follow them. Think about like a boss that you really liked, and when they ask you to do something, you're more likely to do it and get it done, and it's no big deal. Now think back to a boss that you had that you didn't like, that you maybe butt head with, or you just didn't agree with the way that they handled things. And if they asked you to do something, how did you feel? You probably weren't as motivated to knock it out of the park. Well, students are the same way. If they like you, guess what? They're going to work for you. Now, I told you I was going to focus on the difficult students. So I want to talk about how to deal with disrespect in the classroom. And this will only work if you have taken the time to build relationships. And you want to use this strategy with a calm, non-sarcastic voice. You want to be at eye level because you want the student to feel safe. You want them to feel more in control. I'm pretty short, so I usually don't have this problem when I'm dealing with middle school students or high school students. But when I'm dealing with the lower elementary, I get down on one knee to be at what eye level with them when I'm talking to them. So let's say you have a student in class who's just being disrespectful and trying to talk back to you with some attitude. So they say something back, something rude. If you can, ask them to step out of the classroom and talk to them in the hallway. If not, ask them to stay after class. And the first question goes like this: who are you talking to? Their response is probably going to be like, my teacher. Question number 2, how should you be talking to me? Now, if you built this relationship, they're probably going to say with respect. And the reason why you want to ask this is because you want them to reflect on their behavior. Because we don't want to tell them, you should be talking to me with respect. We want that to come from them because we want them to internalize that. Question number 3, were you doing it? Now, the reason why this question is so important is that we need to have the same experience with somebody in order to move forward. And this is like anybody in your life. If people are not experiencing the same problem, we're never going to get anywhere. So if you're yelling at your spouse about taking out the trash and you're upset and they're not, and they don't see taking out the trash as a problem, then you're not going to get anywhere. They have to feel the same experience with you in order to move forward. Last question you're going to ask, question number 4. So how are you going to talk to me? The student's probably going to say, with respect. And after their response, you say, thank you, I appreciate that. You don't yell back, you're not sarcastic, you're not mean, you don't try to stick it to them and say something rude back. You're calm, you're collective, you're in control the whole time. Remember, the person asking the questions is the person in control. When you have an explosive student, a student that's difficult, and they start being disrespectful in class, Don't take it personal. Remember, there's a lot of things that could be going on, and it's probably not you. You're just the punching bag because you're there. It's going to be really important to not take it personal. Take a step back, because that way you'll be able to ask those 4 questions in a very calm, sincere way to create change, to keep the relationship and not ruin it and have to start all over, because it's going to be very difficult once you ruin the relationship to try to make amends. The reason why we want to spend so much time on building these relationships, because I want you to think, what if difficult students looked up to me? What about if they respected me, trusted me, and liked being around my company? Those difficult students wouldn't be difficult anymore. And that's what we want. We want them to be able to sit in our classrooms, to be engaged, to learn, to ask questions. And that relationship will help them feel safe and be able to get the most they can out of your wonderful lesson. Thanks for taking the time to watch. And remember, we don't need to make students want to come to school. We need to create a school that students want to go to.